There's a place where history's shadows never quite fade, an old asylum standing abandoned, yet brimming with echoes of its grim past. This is the story of Hollow Creek Asylum, a site of fear and forgotten horrors. Hollow Creek Asylum was established in the early 1900s, built with the promise of progressive care for the mentally ill. It was designed to be a beacon of hope and healing, a place where cutting-edge treatments and compassionate care would guide patients towards recovery. The initial reports were hopeful. The grand architecture and modern amenities were intended to represent a new era in mental health care. However, as the years passed, the asylum's bright future turned into a dark chapter in history. By the 1930s, things began to change. The asylum's once promising methods devolved into inhumane practices. The financial strain of maintaining such a large facility, combined with a lack of understanding and empathy for the patient's conditions, led to increasingly drastic measures. What began as well-intentioned treatment gave way to cruel experiments and barbaric methods. Staff members, under pressure to show results, started to implement procedures that violated ethical standards. These included invasive lobotomies performed with rudimentary tools and electroshock therapy administered without regard for pain or safety. Rumors of these inhumane practices spread, but concrete evidence remained elusive. The asylum's administration was quick to silence dissent and discredit critics. Despite this, tales of abuse began to leak out. Patients who were supposed to be under compassionate care were subjected to suffering and humiliation. Conditions worsened as the asylum's financial situation deteriorated, leading to even harsher treatments and neglect. By the 1960s, Hollow Creek had become notorious. The building itself began to reflect the despair inside its walls. Once pristine hallways became corridors of decay, with peeling paint and broken windows giving the facility a ghostly appearance. The reputation of the asylum had become synonymous with horror. It wasn't long before the state intervened, and Hollow Creek was officially shut down. The facility was abandoned, left to crumble under the weight of its own grim history. Over time, stories of hauntings and ghostly apparitions began to emerge. Locals spoke of strange lights seen through the broken windows at night and heard ghostly cries carried on the wind. These tales added to the asylum's legend, making it a focal point for paranormal enthusiasts and thrill seekers. Amidst these chilling tales, Alex, a vlogger with a passion for the paranormal, decided to investigate Hollow Creek Asylum. Alex was known for their daring explorations of abandoned and supposedly haunted locations. With a camera, a flashlight, and an unshakable curiosity, Alex set out to uncover the truth behind the asylum's dark reputation. As Alex approached the asylum, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature seemed to drop noticeably, and a dense fog began to settle around the building. The once grand facade of Hollow Creek, now crumbling and overgrown, loomed ominously against the gray sky. The iron gates, once majestic, were now rusted and barely functional. Alex managed to push them open with some effort, feeling a palpable sense of foreboding as they stepped through. Inside, the silence was overwhelming. It was a heavy, oppressive quiet, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water and the occasional creak of the building settling. Alex's flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating the peeling paint on the walls and the shattered remnants of what used to be furniture. The air was thick with dust and decay. The hallways of Hollow Creek seemed to stretch on endlessly. Each room Alex explored revealed more signs of the asylum's troubled past. Old patient files scattered on the floor, broken medical equipment abandoned in haste, and walls covered in strange graffiti that hinted at the asylum's dark history. The deeper Alex ventured, the more they felt an unsettling presence. It was as if the building itself was aware of their intrusion, watching and waiting. Alex's camera recorded every moment, capturing the eerie stillness and the haunting remnants of the asylum's former life. The walls were lined with faded photographs and peeling posters, remnants of a bygone era now marred by time and neglect. The sense of abandonment was almost palpable, a stark reminder of the asylum's decline from a place of hopeful treatment to one of despair and horror. In one of the rooms, Alex found old medical charts and patient records scattered about. The documents detailed various treatments and procedures, many of which were horrifying by today's standards. The records spoke of experimental methods and treatments designed to cure conditions that were poorly understood. The more Alex read, the clearer it became that Hollow Creek was not just a place of failed treatments, but a site of extreme and unethical practices. Despite the growing sense of unease, Alex continued their exploration. The building's vastness and the sheer number of rooms and corridors made it easy to become disoriented. Every shadow seemed to move, and every creak of the floorboards felt amplified in the silence. Alex's flashlight flickered intermittently, adding to the eerie atmosphere and casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. Eventually, Alex came across a basement door, heavy and rusted, nearly sealed shut. The basement was rumored to be the site of the most disturbing experiments. With determination and some effort, Alex managed to pry the door open and descend into the darkness below. The basement was a stark contrast to the rest of the building. It was filled with an array of old, grimy medical equipment, table dust, and outdated files. The air was cold here, and the silence was even more pronounced. Alex's flashlight revealed a scene frozen in time. Abandoned surgical instruments and scattered documents that hinted at the grim nature of the experiments conducted here. Among the debris, Alex discovered a series of files and notebooks detailing the asylum's most notorious experiments. These documents described procedures that were both cruel and unusual, designed to break patients' wills and test the limits of their endurance. One notebook, in particular, stood out. It contained detailed notes on experimental treatments and the psychological effects on patients. The entries were chilling, with descriptions of subjects being subjected to extreme stress and pain, all in the name of treatment. The most disturbing find was a photograph labeled Subject 27. Next to it was a handwritten note that read, "Will not leave." The photograph depicted a patient with an expression of pure terror, and the note seemed to imply that this subject, or perhaps their suffering, had never truly ended. It was as if the very walls of the basement were trying to convey the depth of the horror that had occurred here. As Alex continued to explore the basement, strange occurrences began to escalate. The flickering light of the flashlight cast unsettling shadows, and the temperature seemed to drop even further. The air grew dense with an almost palpable sense of dread. Whispers started to drift through the air, faint at first, but growing louder and more insistent as Alex moved deeper into the basement. The whispers seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, blending into a dissonant murmur that made it difficult for Alex to focus. The shadows on the wall seemed to shift and move of their own accord, and Alex could not shake the feeling of being watched. It was as if the basement itself was alive, reacting to the presence of an intruder. As the whispers grew louder, Alex's sense of unease intensified. The flashlight continued to flicker, casting erratic beams of light that only heightened the atmosphere of dread. Shapes moved just beyond the edge of vision, fleeting and elusive. The sense of being watched became overwhelming, and Alex realized they were no longer alone. In a state of growing panic, Alex stumbled upon a room with old, torn curtains fluttering in the draft. The room was cluttered with various medical devices, old journals, and more scattered documents. One journal, in particular, caught Alex's attention. Its pages were filled with disturbing entries about the asylum's final days and the increasingly desperate measures taken by the staff. The final entries in the journal were particularly chilling. They spoke of a growing restlessness among the patients and an increasing sense of despair among the staff. The last entry read, "The patients are restless. They do not leave." This cryptic note seemed to echo the note found earlier, Subject 27, suggesting that the torment inflicted on the patients might have left a lingering presence within the asylum. The sense of dread grew unbearable as the whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, blending into a continuous, agonizing wail. The walls seemed closed, and the shadows darker and more defined. Alex's camera recorded fleeting images of shadowy figures and strange anomalies, but the footage was inconsistent and often obscured by the erratic lighting. Desperate to escape, Alex rushed back through the asylum's twisted corridors, their heart racing with every step. The shadows seemed to follow, and the whisper door. The exit, now a beacon of hope, seemed impossibly far away. Alex pushed through the doors and emerged into the night, gasping for air. Once outside, Alex looked back at the asylum. Its dark silhouette stood against the night sky, the building seemingly watching as if daring anyone to return. The experience left Alex shaken, but they knew they had captured something significant. The footage, left behind as a grim record of their exploration, revealed the horrifying truths hidden within Hollow Creek Asylum. The asylum remains a grim monument to a dark chapter in history, its secrets,